What's up, guys? My name is Dan, and in this video we're talking about 5 mistakes that tent campers make, new tent campers make, or any tent campers make in wet, rainy, spring weather. Oh, by the way, it's spring here in Wisconsin. This is like the best camping weather of all time, even though it's technically raining right now. And we did not plan this for rain. We actually planned this video today and didn't know it was gonna rain, so perfect timing. All right, the first mistake is that most people don't realize that there's actually a difference between water resistant and waterproof. As a matter of fact, people think that water resistant and waterproof are actually the same thing. And we've got a water resistant tent here, technically water resistant, and we have a technically waterproof tent here. So let's go check them out. Let's go check out the water resistant tent here. This is a tent from Big Agnes. This is the copper spur. This is the platinum version. Pretty expensive tent. So you would really hope that this would be waterproof, but even a tent like this is not waterproof. It's made out of nylon, and nylon isn't waterproof. It's just very water resistant depending on how it's manufactured. This one's already starting to sag a little bit in the rain. It stopped raining now, but it's only been set up for maybe an hour. And what you can do is go online to whatever manufacturer that you're purchasing your tent from and see if it lists what's called the hydrostatic head. All right, so you can see that this tent, very thin. When I put my hand on it, you can just see right through it pretty much. But what you can do is check with the manufacturer if the hydrostatic head has been measured. And that's super confusing. Hydrostatic head, what is that? Well, essentially what that means is it's measured in millimeters. So you're gonna see a number listed in millimeters. And the higher the number, the more water resistant the material is. So what they essentially did is to test the nylon is they took a column of water and they filled it up. And at whatever height, whatever amount of millimeters height, that water started to leak through the bottom, that measures the hydrostatic head. So if the tent was measured at 1,000 millimeters of water, that's, it's okay. It's not terrible. It's probably gonna drip through at some point. But if it measures at 5,000 milliliters, that's a much more water resistant tent, and you could probably depend on that a little bit more in the rain. Now, you may or may not pay for that when you're purchasing it, but at least you kind of know what to look for when you're testing out some of the materials for your water resistant or water resistant. Well, just make sure you get a waterproof or water resistant tent. Okay, let's go check out the waterproof tent, which this one actually is pretty waterproof. This is a extremely expensive tent made out of a material that's called Dyneema, or DCF, Dyneema composite fabric. And it's essentially like a piece of plastic. It's almost like a really strong grocery bag. That's kind of what it feels like. And it is totally waterproof, like waterproof to the point where water's not gonna get through this at all. You could pile water in here for a very long time and it's not gonna drip through, but you're gonna pay a premium for this. And the reason you're gonna pay a premium is because it's just a special fabric that's extremely strong and extremely lightweight. And so it was originally designed for sailboat sails, but this is gonna be a waterproof tent. Now, just because something is waterproof from the material doesn't mean you're not gonna still have issues. And let's go inside one of these tents to talk about that. All right, we're not gonna go inside the tent. I found an easier way to do this. We're just gonna disconnect the tent. So inside of a tent, when you get in the tent, you look up, check to see if your tent is seam sealed. What that means is this. So you can kind of see this is a seam, so they had to sew the tent together, the nylon together to another sheet of nylon. And there's a piece of tape on here that they put over the stitching here. And that's really important because if you didn't have that, the water would leak through. And some manufacturers have seam sealed their tents and other manufacturers have not seam sealed their tents. So just make sure that that's done. Now, if you already bought your tent and you're going and looking at it, you're like, oh wow, mine's not seam sealed. You can actually do that yourself. It's not very difficult to do. There's kits that you can buy, but that's really something to know for sure when you're purchasing your tent about water resistance and waterproof. Also, everything else that you're wearing in the weather while you're camping is subjected to waterproofness, like your rain jacket. This is, I actually have the tag in my pocket right here. This is a Mountain Hardwear stretch ozonic rain jacket. The Dry Q Active Stretch 40D 2.5L is 100% nylon, The Dry-Q Active waterproof technology banishes moisture.
Dan, why do you have that in your pocket?
Because I just bought this jacket from Backcountry, actually. They're the sponsor of today's video. You can actually buy everything I'm showing you at backcountry.com, and you can actually talk to what are called gearheads. They're the people that chat with you online to ask them whether or not something is waterproof, water resistant, what the hydrostatic head rating is, if it's seam sealed, all of that stuff. So make sure you head over to backcountry.com. They actually gave me a coupon code. It's Becker15 for 15% off. Some exclusions do apply, but check it out, see if it works, and maybe it'll save you a couple bucks. All right, the next mistake is most new campers don't know how to use the guy lines on their tent or even what a guy line is. So let's talk about that real quick. So a guy line is simply a line that comes off of your tent like this to a tie-out point. Some manufacturers give these to you, others don't. If you don't have this, go out and buy it and find the tie-out points on your tent. But you're really just staking this out somewhere in the ground so that it just brings more stability to your tent in inclement weather, in windy weather. You don't really want this super tight. You want it kind of loose. So maybe, put it back a little bit. There's a little bit of slack there. The reason for that is because it can really ruin your tent if it's really too taut. It could actually rip your tent. So a little bit of slack isn't a bad thing. And that's what a guy line in. And if there's weather coming to your campsite, make sure you got these out there because it's going to make a big difference, especially in the middle of the night when you're trying to sleep. The next mistake that campers make in really nasty, bad, wet spring weather is that they'll set up their tent like this and they won't put any type of a ground protection underneath their tent. They're just going to completely rely on the tent itself to keep them dry, or they just don't know any better. They just don't know that they should probably do it. So here's a prime example. So look inside this tent real quick here. This is that really thin tent. You can see the ground cloth through it. Look at how thin this tent is. Now this is a very expensive tent, and this ground cloth obviously got blown around in the rain and then the wind a little bit while we've been out here. That's why it's misplaced. But I would not, even with this really expensive tent, trust this very lightweight bottom of this tent to keep me dry in the rain. And so what you want to do is place a ground cloth underneath your tent. You want to make sure that the ground cloth is just slightly smaller than the bottom of your tent. And the reason for that is because if you get a ground cloth that's too big and it's sticking out like this, what's going to happen is the rain's going to come, it's going to land right here, and then it's going to seep in between the tent and the ground cloth, and then eventually, with enough pressure, with you laying on it on the inside of that tent, that's going to come up through the bottom of the tent and into the tent and make for a really, really wet, miserable night. And then not only will the ground cloth keep you dry, but it's also going to protect the bottom of your tent from, just stuff, rocks, thorns, sticks, that kind of thing that could potentially come up and break through the bottom of your tent. All right, this next tip, this can't be stressed enough. Most new campers make the mistake of looking for shelter underneath trees, but they forget to look up when they do it. And I've mentioned this in other videos recently, but we're going to talk about it again. So this is a tree that actually has come down where I once camped. And good thing my hammock, because I was camping in a hammock, wasn't set up when this tree came down. I actually came back out here and noticed that it has come down since then. But this is a dead tree that could have easily fallen down in the middle of a storm on me while I was camping. So when you get to camp, just make sure that you're looking up and looking out for what could potentially fall on you in the middle of the night and make a really, really bad camping experience. Okay, the next mistake that I see a lot of new campers make in really bad rainy weather is that they don't use a liner in their backpack to protect gear from getting wet. And I'm gonna show you a budget way to do this. All you're gonna do is grab your backpack and a garbage bag. You take your garbage bag and you're gonna put it inside of the backpack first, and then once you get it in there, you can then put all of the gear that you don't want to get wet, like your sleeping bag and your pillows or your clothing or anything that you want, inside of that garbage bag first. Roll that garbage bag up, and now all of that stuff inside of your backpack is completely waterproof and you don't have to worry about it. And the wet, nasty weather from spring. Hey, Mick, can I see that camera real quick?
Yeah, of course.
Hey, I got a real quick question for you. This is Emmett, by the way. He's the new cameraman, editor for me. Emmett, have you made any mistakes in the rain while you were camping before?
Well, I mean, first of all, I wasn't even setting this tent up correctly. So there's that. But yeah.
He set the tent up for me.
Absolutely. I've forgotten tarps. I have not lined my backpack correctly. I've not brought in the proper gear.
Okay, so this was probably a helpful video for you then, right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
good. So editing this video is going to be an amazing experience for you, am I right?
Of course.
All right, tell Emmett hello in the comments, by the way, for coming on board. And then also put down in the comments if there's anything that you have done that has ruined your backpacking or camping trip because of wet weather. And we'll see you guys on the next one.